Yeah, we learned all about Leon on the internet too. And the leader of the Filipino movement is one of the great names in history, Emilio Aguinaldo. It's a great name. And Emilio Aguinaldo is going to be helping America overthrow the yoke that is Spanish oppression. Just pee a little bit. Now, the problem is, Emilio Aguinaldo is going to be our ally, but as soon as the war's over, and he thinks that we're going to, help them get independence and then take off, he becomes our enemy during the Filipino insurrection. Now, we, in 1898, during the war, McKinley annexes, or United States annexes Hawaii. So Hawaii now becomes an American possession. We can use it as a coaling station, and it's going to be especially important when it comes to the Philippines, because Hawaii is obviously all the way to the Philippines. So we talked about spheres of influence yesterday. Think about what 1898 did to our sphere of influence. We have no colonies in 1897. By 1898, we're going to have Hawaii, and we're going to have the Philippines in our sphere of influence, which means we're going to have China in our sphere of influence. And then we're going to have a lot of areas in Latin America, which means Mexico and Northern and South America are going to be in our direct sphere of influence. And this is going to change the nature of the United States. We're going to go from being a big, happy producer of crap to a globally looking country. And today, we are the strongest military power in the history of humanity. And it started with the Spanish-American War, rightly or wrongly. Do what?
It started with horses and bayonets.
Okay. So the war itself only lasted about 3 months. In fact, we lose way more people to disease than we did to battle deaths. I think we lost less than 400 people with battle deaths. And we lost almost 4,000 to disease, like malaria and stuff. Montezuma's revenge and whatnot. Teddy Roosevelt famously quit being Assistant Secretary of the Navy and became a colonel in the Army, and he and his Rough Riders went into Cuba. It is one of the most over-glorified American stories in history of the Rough Riders charging up the hill. I mean, obviously they were brave and did it, although if you read the whole story, a regiment of black soldiers did most of fighting, and then the rich white guys came with all the glory of their horses shooting and stuff.
Of course they did. It's America.
If you look at the pictures after the war, you can see a lot of black soldiers in the pictures. And obviously, I'm not taking away. The Rough Riders were very brave, and I didn't get shot at, and they did, so I can't do that. But they are certainly glorified in history. But this was not a war that had tons and tons and tons of major battles. Spain was overwhelmed. It lasted 3 months, and it ended with the Treaty of Paris, or as they say in Amsterdam, the Treaty of Paris. It was randomly a J in Paris. The Dutch is so weird.
See, Cuba, the Rough Riders going to
Treaty of Paris. There's been several Treaty of Paris. Do what?
The Rough Riders going to Cuba. Just imagine riding a horse across the ocean.
Yeah, like the apocalypse or something. Yeah, Treaty of Paris. This is not our first Treaty of Paris, but this is actually our last Treaty of Paris. Not really. There's a Paris Accords that ends Vietnam. All right, it's one of our treaties of Paris. In the Treaty of Paris, America had also invaded Puerto Rico. So in the treaty itself, America got Puerto Rico, which just this election cycle voted that they would prefer to become a state. Well, it's quite a process, but this is as close as we've been to talking about it. So we get Puerto Rico. We get, Republicans are very worried about that, actually. We get Guam.
Yes.
Is over here, which is a Spanish possession.
Very useful.
We buy the Philippines for $15 or $20 million. Think about that. We bought an island of humans for $15 or $20 million. Cuba itself is not in the Treaty of Paris. Getting Puerto Rico, getting Guam, buying the Philippines, that is. What happens with Cuba is it becomes what we're going to call like a protectorate. We're not exactly going to give them their total independence. We passed another law. It's an addition to a law. It's called the Platt Amendment. Is that on there somewhere?
No,
No. What was the Platt Amendment?
it
Oh,
gave
it
them
is. You
complete
said that
independence.
he
We got
our
them. The
interests.
soldiers came out of Cuba. They pulled out of Cuba.
Soldiers pull out of Cuba. We are going to have some control. The Platt Amendment did two things. Number one, it allowed us to have a base in Cuba as long as we want to. We actually rent Guantanamo Bay. It's in a contractual agreement, and every year we pay Cuba a very small amount. It is not a huge amount. So we get Guantanamo Bay, and then we also get veto power over some of their constitutional issues, and we reserve the right to intervene when we want to. But they sort of get their independence. Let's see, Cuba free from I will say this: part of the Treaty of Paris, Cuba was no longer Spanish, but the protectorate thing was separate. The imperialist debate that happens after the election was focused on the issue of the Philippines. Do we keep the Philippines or do we not keep the Philippines? So that's where the debate was. Many people said that we owed it to the Philippines to keep them a protectorate. That we could send over Protestant missionaries, because what is the Philippines?
Catholic.
It's Catholic, and we can fix that with Protestant missionaries.
That's a weird idea, isn't it?
It is. It's a terrible idea.
My wife's stepmom they're both Southern Baptist missionaries, and they went over to Malta for a mission trip. And I was like, Malta's 95% Catholic, Becky, and she was like, I know, that's why I went over. But she wasn't kidding. That was actually, yeah.
I don't understand why that would matter. If it's Christian, why would you care?
Shit.
Well, I'm not going to talk about that.
No, I know, but I'm just. It seems silly.
Have you noticed, by the way, that since I've been doing this, we don't tell as many stories?
And you
Things get going pretty fast.
You keep your tongue down.
Deposit more often.
Yeah, I insult way fewer people online.
This was much fun.
I'm sorry. Businesses were really eager. So businessmen who before were kind of curious, do we want this imperialism? Do we not want this imperialism? Now they're like, yay, imperialism. They have like imperialism pendants in their rooms. They keep up with imperialist box scores in the sports page. Raw materials. We can get their crap now. So these are some of the arguments. And this is a stepping, and then lastly, it's a stepping stone of China. The Philippines is going to allow us to be in the Chinese sphere of influence to compete with the dirty English and the mean old Germans in the Far East. On the anti-imperialist side, which tended to move in the democratic direction, they feared a couple things. Number one, they feared that foreign affairs would become more important than domestic issues. Now, this is a time where there's imperialism going on and progressivism going on. This is a really busy time.
Were we progressive in our imperialism? Like,
We're actually going to answer that question here in a second, Toots McGee.
I don't know what that is, but okay.
Okay. Number two, they argued we are going to ship jobs over to these places because they'll work for cheaper than we will, and it'll be bad for American business.
Wow.
And that probably did
It's kind of
happen.
open for that, but okay.
Kind of prophetic. They also said that we will end up spending too much of our government's money defending these places that it could be used at home for Americans. And while that does sound progressive, remember the Democratic Party isn't the single most racial equity is on them. They're also like, this will make our racial purity be diluted. So the first couple are like, oh wow, those are some pretty good points. Oh, there's that one.
Yeah, so it's like, wow, they're more rational. Oh wait.
No. Every time you think the Catholics are going to, or the Catholics, the Democrats are going to be rational. Catholics are never rational.
Where's the kid?
We've never been rational.
Except for selling indulgences.
That was
That was rational. Many people, so in response to our decision to stay in the Philippines, because as we know, God told McKinley to stay in the Philippines, they're formed the Anti-Imperialist League. The Anti-Imperialist League was formed in response to our colonization of the Philippines. Like I said before, Samuel Gompers, Mark Twain, Andrew Carnegie, the presidents of a bunch of universities in the Ivy League, for instance, were in the Anti-Imperialist League. Then one thing that made America different from Europe was that we didn't colonize. Americans have always had this odd tango with Europe, right? Do we want to be like European nations and compete with them? But we also want to be separate from them too, right? A lot of conservatives today argue that we don't want to be like Europe's social model.
We do need to be like yours.
What does that mean?
It's like just a little place.
It is a nice place. They're definitely skinnier there.
Germany's like much prettier and like London's awesome. I don't know.
Oh, that's
I
what.
like the European culture more instead of that crazy Americans.
Said what? Kelly and I are always talking about when I retire and then I'll go ahead and get another master's in economics and I'll be my retirement job will be economist and we can leave, maybe hopefully go to Europe and live, and we're always talking. And Kelly wants to go to places like Germany and whatnot. I'm like, no, we will go Southern Europe.
No.
I'm always so scared. The only job I don't want to be in Germany. I will say this: I've been to Germany before, and it's.
Go to Ireland.
Kelly didn't want to go to Ireland either.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I'll actually
Go to Rome.
I'll actually want to be like in Naples or something. But I will say, I tell you, when I went to Germany for the first time, I will tell you a story about that. Did I tell you about going to Germany for the first time? Yeah, I might need to pause that. We